Okay, we're looking on day 5, Eric Johnson's 1962 Chevy pickup. We've got Tony, our intern, in the back over here, working on cleaning up some sheet metal and trying a new rust conversion treatment to see if it works better than the stuff I've used in the past. Always like to experiment with stuff, you know, see what's new and good and improved and all that jazz. So today we're going to be working on that kind of stuff some more, at least Tony is, and trying to get rust off of the inner fenders and this and that and the other. And I think maybe I'll do some more rust repairs, so stay tuned. Okay, so while Tony is taking care of all of that, we're going to go ahead and take care of some rust repair on this door here. Now what I'm going to do is show you how to do rust repair on your doors. I like to start with my right side because if I make a mistake on the right side, I won't see it every time I get in the driver's door. So take care of the passenger side of stuff first, then you'll be able to learn and you'll be a little bit more up on the par when you're doing everything on the left side. So the outside of the skin here comes up pretty tall, about 12 inches, although we won't be using all of that. And the bottom also goes up pretty far, but again, we won't be using all that either. We want to keep as much of the original sheet metal as possible. So what I like to do is start with checking out the door, seeing how far up the rust is going, how much of the patch panel does it have, or do I need, is the any dents hiding on me in here anywhere. So we'll check it all out and then we'll go ahead and start cutting stuff. Keep in mind we don't want to remove this piece right here because this is going to help us line up our doors in the future. Everything lined up pretty nice on this, so we'll be leaving these. So this is a door stop right here. It's in pretty good shape, so we can reuse this. But when you take off your nuts from little things like this, just go ahead and screw the bolts right back into the hole, and then everything's going to be all nice together and easier to find. So we'll clean this up and install this back in later. So normally I take this trim off, but I'm trying to save a little bit of time, a little bit of money, so I'm just going to leave it on for now. Okay, so I can't really see any dents up in here. I can see where my rust is pitting up right here. So I'm just going to grind these areas here and see if I can find anything hiding. I can see my rust is going up 4 or 5 inches on one side. And the other side, it doesn't look like there's any additional Bondo or dents in here. So it looks like I'm able to use a small patch panel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first, when you think about these doors, you'd think that they were nice and flat, but in reality they're not. They have a bit of a curvature going on with them. What you want to do is get a straight edge like this and take a look at it before you start cutting anything so you can see exactly how it goes. So you get a curvature going here to the top, it's coming on down, and then at the very bottom here it'll straighten out. Let me show you what I mean. So you can see we got our straight edge on there, and you can see what kind of gap that you have right there. And then you can see the gap that we've got on this other side. So we want to maintain that gap all the way down. Now your patch panels here, a lot of times they won't have that same curvature, so you kind of want to check at those and see what that's looking like. Yeah, they tend to suck down in the center a little bit, so just try to bow out the middle here a little bit. When I'm cutting this strip out down here, I don't want to cut it straight across, because if I do that, it has a tendency to more tuck in or tuck out. Just it's a little bit harder to work with. But if you go with about an inch of a diagonal cut, somehow that evens out the stress along the lines, and it's a lot easier to control and work with. So I'm going to measure up and see how far. And another bit of math that I'll play into this is, where am I going to be cutting my inside piece? This one doesn't really need a lot. I'm only going to go up about 2 inches into the door here. So I don't want to cut my outer piece and my inner piece at the same place. I want to have at least 3 inches between those two different cuts. If they're cut exactly at the same place, it's going to be harder to get that in line. Just like we did with our front fender, we're going to mark the curvature of the door here so we can make sure that we maintain that. So just like that. I'm going to go 5 inches here, I'm going to go 6 inches here, giving me a slight diagonal upgrade. Before I cut this out, I'm going to cut this panel out. I'll use tape to help maintain a nice straight line. You could also just take a straight edge and mark a line too. And of course, we'll be saving this for future projects. The line down here is going to want to be maintained. So another trick to help keep it lined up is we'll measure up about 8, 9, 10 inches, whatever you need to, for you know, up above your patch panel. Next thing I'm going to be working on is getting this piece here to slide right up into the slot where it's going to be. So what I'll do is I'll just simply put this up here, and I'll mark right where it's buttoned up against. And then I'll grind off the edge of the sheet metal right here, right where the fold is, and I'm just going to grind it until the two pieces of metal separate, and then I'll do the same thing on the bottom down here. So what you want to kind of keep in mind is that you can't just take this and just stick it right onto the bottom, because the thickness of the metal here on the bottom is going to make it that much further down. So we actually have to grind off the amount of metal that this is going to slide up, you know, just the 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch here. So you can see I grind just until it splits right there, and on the sides and on the bottom down here. I want to be able to take my new piece and slide it up nice and easy. I don't want to catch it on the sides. And I want to make sure that my curvature here of this piece is matching the curvature of the door. I'll grind this area off. It's just going to be easier to do now, because after I cut it, it gets a little bit floppier and it's a little bit harder to grind. Plus, I'm going to be doing some tack welds up here to hold this piece on, and I'm going to need some bare metal to get those tack welds on. Now double check my measurement on the bottom here. Now I'll put some tack welds on here so that this is nice and firm. It's exactly where I want it. When I cut it out, I'll just be skimming on this new piece on the top of that, and I'll slice that out. I'll skip over the spot welds until I've got my cuts all the way across. Then I'll take my spot welds off, and this way we'll have an exact cut, exactly where we want it for this. And the cutting wheel I'll be using is the thinnest metal cutting wheel I can find. If you have a large gap in there, it's tougher to work with. When you put cutting wheels on, it's best to put the black side out. It just makes it easier to see things. If you have this myriad of colors running around, it makes it a little more difficult. Again, when you're cutting, make sure you don't just take the cutting wheel and just plunge it in. On some doors there's fender braces if you're going to be going up far enough, and of course on the edge there's the inside of the door. So you'll cut out the mass and then you can gently work these areas. So now I can gently pry this off. And that's what that looks like. And here's why it rusts. Now I'll take my outside piece and I'll set it to the side and we'll work on the inside piece. So just like we did on our front, we'll go up a couple of inches and make a mark so we make sure we maintain this bottom edge down here. When I'm doing a piece this small, the bottom will just slide right up there and make it really easy to cut out. If you're going to be going a little bit higher up and you're going to need to be using a larger piece, then a lot of times what you need to do is cut away some of the section of the bottom here so that this piece will snug up all the way to where it needs to be. Tony's gone ahead and grinded this stuff down for us and cleaned it up some, so now I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit more metal cleaner on there. Whenever I'm doing stuff like this, I always like to go online and see what's new and this and that. So I was online the other day and I saw something where you use white vinegar and you mix this 4-to-1 with some water, and then you simply wash it on there. You let it sit for about a half an hour, then you just wash it off with regular water. So I'm going to go ahead and try that on one inner fender on the inside, and then on the other one I'll be using the standard metal cleaner that I normally use. We'll see which of the two works best and go from there. Okay, so we're going to let that set up for a bit. We'll come back in about 20-30 and see what she's doing. Meanwhile, we'll get back on our door. So I put my piece up here, I scribed it so that I can see where I need to ground for the tack welds. Generally I'll cut the top here and then I'll just scribe the sides, and then I'll cut these off with this off. It's just a little bit easier. Bottom of the door right in the front right here, there's a brace, so when you're cutting, make sure that you look out for that brace. And then I generally just cut off the bulk of everything, and then I'll take this here off. You can either use a spot weld cutter on these, or you can just cut them off. With the bottom entirely cut off, now I can clean up the interior of the door and get as much of the crusty rust off as possible. Okay, so now I'll take the door outside and I'll clean it up. Okay, the items have been sitting for a while. So you can see here, that does looks pretty good, cleaned up pretty decent. And so now what we do is just wash this off with water. And you can see this here is looking really good too. I think though I'd have to say this is a little bit cleaner, but we'll wash them off and see what they look after. Alright, yeah, I think I like the metal cleaner a little bit better. It does run like about 14-15 bucks a bottle, but I think it does a little bit better than the other stuff, even though you can get a gallon of the white vinegar for 99 cents. But it'll work you in a pinch, that's for sure. So we get our door as dry as possible, and then we're going to go ahead and shoot in some rust encapsulator or what have you. This is going to be zero rust. I'm trying this stuff out. Looks like it's working pretty good. And I want to kind of concentrate on my edges right here where the metal folds over, because in that area there, it's real likely to rust in the future. So we really want to get a lot of this shot in the nooks and crannies. The front piece on first, and the corners I cut a little V like that, just a small V. You can enlarge it later. And we're going to be using these here little clamps again. So right now I'm just kind of trying to work this bow out right here so the two bows match. So I'll keep working that bow until it's just a little bit higher than the door is. Now I'll start clamping down. Looking good. So now what I'm going to do is just get some tack welds. I'm going to start in the middle and I'm going to work my way out. The reason we do that is if we were to start on our outside edges and work our way in, if there was any extra metal there, then it'd kind of get trapped in the middle. So you work on the middle and then you work your way out. This way, if there's any extra metal, so to speak, it'll work its way out to the edge where it's easier to work on. If it gets bunched in the middle, then you're going to be hard pressed to work it out. Gently remove these. They get stuck in there sometimes. Make sure you don't get any welds too close to them or the metal shrinks and kind of locks them in. Out of all your rust repairs, this is probably going to be your most difficult. The outside of the door, large flat open area of metal. Those are the most large flat open areas are really easy to warp when you're doing metal work or sandblasting or what have you. So you got to be real careful on this. Really take your time. Do your tack welds, make sure you give yourself a good distance between them. So what I'll do now is I'll simply go through and I'll look for all the large gaps. I'll put a spot weld right in the middle of the large gap, then I'll come back and put one in between there. I'll keep doing that until it fills up pretty good, till maybe I've got, like, say, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch difference between my two spot welds, and then I'll go ahead and I'll fill in the spot welds just 1, 2, 3, 4. Constantly feel the metal, make sure that it's even. And just like we discussed on the front fender, when we heat metal, it shrinks. When you hammer on metal, it expands. So we'll do a little bit of welding, it'll shrink a little bit. We'll do a little hammering, it'll expand a little bit. Don't get carried away because you'll make it bow up and stuff. So just nice, easy, gentle, like hammering right on top of the weld, if I didn't already say that. And I'm normally hammering on the new welds when I'm doing that. And the very edges right here, the very edges, I'll leave those to finish off a little bit later. I'll mainly concentrate on the bulk of the middle. After I get about this many welds on here, now I'll go ahead and start grinding down. Sometimes when I do this, I'll do what's known as piggy backing. So you'll see that I have one spot weld here, one here, one here, one here. Then I'll go back and I'll do one right next to one. So I'll have two, and I'll just keep going through there, and I'll find each one that only is just sitting there by one, and I'll piggyback onto the back of that. And then after all these get filled in with 2 piggybacks, then I'll do 3 piggybacks and stuff. My thinking is that this weld back here is cold, so it'll help defer some of the heat. Seems to work well. So be using a large area disc. If you use the smaller wheel and you grind these down, then you tend to get a little bit more digging in kind of a thing. This here will stay up on top, and it'll help show the high and low spots too. So I can see the center starting to bow in just a little bit. So I'll just do a little bit more hammer on dolly in the center and bring it up. You can also use your dolly as a hammer also. After I've got the middle secured up, then I can go ahead and work on the edges. The reason that you have to wait on the edges is that this has to be firm for you to be able to work that kind of slope that it does on the edge here. Okay, let's take a look at what we got. See, that's pretty nice there. So I'm just about done with this outside piece. But when we do these, we don't want any of these weld lines left here. Now you'd think to yourself, oh, I'll just skim over that with some Bondo or primer or whatever. Problem is that when you have a really harsh line like that, or a real strong hard line, it can phantom up later. So your primer or Bondo might shrink down, and then this really harsh line will show up later. So now I'll take the smaller wheel and I'll get all these areas real nice and smooth, so I don't have to worry about them coming back and haunting me in the future. Okay, a little prep all on there to just get any grease or dirt off that I got there. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint this and hide all of the welds. Alright, so that is what that looks like when done. It's really nice and flat and everything. So now I can start on the inside. So when I'm getting this all in here, usually on the edges I'll be trimming those down a little bit more. So I'll just get a few tack welds in this bottom piece right here, then I'll go ahead and flip the door over and we'll check our lines. On the ends right here, they won't quite line up. So what we'll do is we'll get this welded up and we'll have it secured, and all of the areas that do line up nice, we'll weld those up and make them secure. Then what we'll do is we'll tailor in our edges by hammering them in or pulling them out or what have you, whatever's needed to merge it together correctly. Also on this in here, because of all the bends and everything, generally the inside you don't have to worry as much about warping it, but you still want to keep it cool. So after I get this relatively secured up, I'll start rolling the edge on the door right here and securing these here, and then I'll check my slope again. We're just gonna roll these over nice and easy like. Okay, so everything's looking good. Let's take a look at what we got. So you can see here, this is all molding up pretty nice. I'm going to have to work this area here just a little bit. And this right here you can see isn't quite lining up right on here, but that's a no big deal thing. We'll wait till we get everything else welded up and then we'll finish that off. If we start hammering on this now, it might disturb our curvature here. And so that's what our inside looks like. So that's it for today. Tomorrow I'll finish this door up a little bit, and then I'll probably start on the other one, or I'll do something else. So stay tuned.